today already, and for the 2 or 3 presentations that have already happened, we've mentioned a few different things. We've talked about creating bigger impact. We've talked about more collaboration, championing good practice, industry networks, commercialization of technology, and getting published. So often the barriers for this to happen normally comes down to communications, because as academics, as researchers, we often work around our peers. We use a certain type of language. We understand a certain type of science, but then our stakeholders may not work within academia, within our scientific field, or our just general field. So we have to communicate in different ways. So I'm going to talk about today about how we can, one, identify our communications challenges, look at what we're doing, understand the different stakeholders and what the value proposition is, but then deliver our message in a new way, in an exciting way, and in a way that is going to be sticky, is going to be more relevant, and will increase our more opportunities for maybe extra funding, maybe seed funding or commercialization, or to maybe get published in a journal, whatever the outcome is. So it's creating exciting ideas to create more impactful research communications. Okay, so a little bit about me. So I'm one of the lead strategists at Seed, and we're a communications partner currently working with 16 different universities globally. We tend to work on funded research projects, and we tend to come in at the end of a research project when we're looking to measure our ref impact, or we're looking to get additional funding, or just to communicate our research to the world. But my role, I call it enlightened brand strategy. So brand, it's not necessarily logo design. When I talk about brand, I talk about identity. An enlightened brand strategy is creating an identity for positive change and growth. So I believe all research projects and all products and technology should have an identity. It should have a voice, and pretty much all the work that we're doing here is there for positive change and growth, whether it be upcycling, side cycling, downcycling, and just circularity as a whole. And it's creating communication strategy with a conscience. So with any strategy, I always start in one place, and I always say focus on the problem, which actually sounds a bit negative. But if we focus on the problem of how we're going to deliver our research, our technology, our knowledge and findings, we need to start in what is the barriers in terms of communication. So I often ask research projects, what are our 3 biggest communications challenges? And it's a good thing to kind of think about and focus on, because once we've identified the 3 biggest communication challenges, it literally is just a process of reverse engineering, dissecting, moving backwards, and then we tend to move forwards. But if we understand the challenges, then we can be more solution focused. So in terms of research projects, this is how we work. This is the architecture. We work like a Venn diagram. It wasn't that long ago, actually, that we used to work episodically. So we would probably start with some kind of insight, what the research is doing and what it's hoping to achieve. We may create an identity, whether it be give it a name, we might give it a micro website, something like that. Maybe we create some white papers or an ebook, whatever it is. We create content, and then we engage our community with that content. And actually, the more and more that we work with research projects, we realize that it doesn't really work episodically. Actually, these 4 areas is more like a Venn diagram. They need to work at the same time. So if we're going to start anywhere, I would always advise to start with community engagement. But then at the same time, we may create content, so we can create insight. From that insight, we can develop our identity. Once the identity is out there, we can get more insight, which might mean we might want to do more community engagement. So we actually work on those 4 pillars all at the same time. And if we do that, we get started, we kind of involve ourselves with active listening, asking good questions, and creating identity that's relevant, that's connected with our stakeholders, and it actually encourages positive feedback loops. Then actually we tend to find that we can gain much more traction, we can gain better impact with our research, and ultimately fulfill the objectives that have come from our communications challenges. So those are the 4 areas that we advise research projects to work on. So stakeholder engagement is it's a tricky area because within research funding now, we're asked to do more and more and more stakeholder engagement. And stakeholder engagement now might be moving into areas that are a bit uncomfortable for us. We might have to speak to people that we're not familiar with, that we don't understand, that we don't actually know why, we kind of get sometimes positioned in a place where we have to do stakeholder engagement that might not be directly related to the research that we're doing. So, and it's not what we're trained to do. So the key is to understand what stakeholder engagement actually is, where we can add value, and if there are knowledge and skills gaps, where these can be plugged. So my definition of stakeholder engagement is about bridging the gap between us and our stakeholders. So at the moment, depending on how many stakeholders that you have within your research, and let's look at a stakeholder, what a stakeholder could be. It could be the general public. It could be commercial. It could be industry. It might be top level C-suite industry that we want to talk to. It might be other researchers. It might be other universities. It all depends. So we have to identify who those stakeholders are, and then we need to bridge that gap. We need to get closer to them. So how do we get closer? And we can get closer through conversation, socializing, and relationship building. And these are the key questions that we need to ask in terms of our stakeholder engagement. Are we moving in the right circles? Are we talking the right language? Is our audience front and center of our communications, and are they the hero in our story? So we do exercises in terms of narrative. How do we create a narrative around our research that has a beginning, a middle, and an end? How do we create a story where actually the stakeholder, or the end user, or the specific audience is the hero in our conversation? Because we often position ourselves as the hero within our own research, which means that we often talk about ourselves and the work that we're doing, and we can get very, very specific in the language. But if we're communicating to industry, if we're communicating to business leaders and sector leaders and influencers in those fields, we have to put them as the hero within the story. And it's all about creating a value proposition chain where we can then do that. Okay, I've got a few case studies here. Now, these case studies there are video and they do have sound. Now, when I've done this in the past, the video often works, but the sound doesn't. If the sound doesn't work, don't worry, I will send the video separately. But luckily, they kind of work without sound to a point. So first one I'm going to show you is actually come from the Central Office for Public Interest. Now, this actually is all around pollution. So although it's not about upcycling, the reason why I'm showing this project, because it started off with very limited seed funding to get the research going, but it created so much traction. And often if you understand about air pollution, especially in London, it's at in very, very high levels, very, very toxic, and it's a huge issue. Hence why we're trying to reduce the amount of traffic within London and trying to create more clean travel, clean energy, etc. within the city. Now, the reason why this project was so good was that they had a certain audience and stakeholders that they were communicating to, but actually they use a different subject and a different hook and angle to get the right stakeholder engaged with the content. So if you just bear with me. Okay. Hopefully this works.
Ella Deborah lived near the South Circular Road, which is one of London's busiest routes.
Pollution from busy roads, a coroner found today, contributed to the 9-year-old premature death.
Ella's family didn't know the risks posed by air pollution.
Nobody in the UK knew. Air pollution is invisible. Its damage ignored. So we connected air pollution to the one thing nobody in the UK ignores: house prices. We mapped 1.5 billion data points, accurate to 20 meters squared, developed a simple rating system, and created an air quality report for every address in the United Kingdom. For the first time, we connected air pollution to the price of properties. The higher the air pollution, the greater the financial impact. Angry homeowners could lobby the government to bring forward the ban on petrol and diesel cars. Using our data, we designed an interactive type system that spiked when air pollution did. We ran on digital out of home and building projections. We targeted wealthy areas with high air pollution, property classifieds, and direct mailed estate agents. In a nation obsessed with property, address pollution was front page news.
The toxic air we breathe is a big issue for London, and the cost to their health as well as their pockets.
Also concerned they could if London's property market hard. A great idea of having some property itself.
Under intense pressure, the Minister of Health endorsed us, and the government brought forward the change we lobbied for. And we changed the law.
Estate agents are legally obliged to disclose the information on the addresscommission.org website.
As a result, property portals adopted our system, and the European Climate Foundation gave us funding to expand. Address Pollution hacked the value of private property to solve the public health crisis, ensuring no family will be in the same position as Ella's. AddressPollution.org made air pollution impossible to ignore by making it illegal to ignore.
Building your online business? Go to
There we go.
Wix.com and set up.
I'll just come out of that.
Your store on a single integrated platform.
Started to come out. Bear with me. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that was that. So it was an interesting campaign, actually. And I really liked how they used property as a hook and an angle to then get people's attention, to get people thinking about pollution in a different way. So although when we're communicating our research, we often just specifically talk about the research, but when we're doing a value proposition of our stakeholder, we might find that they care about something different. It's relative to what we're doing, but it might be, say, for PV panels, it might be the cost of houses, it might be the cost of being energy efficient, it might be insulation, it might be the cost of building houses, whether it be, it could be anything, it could be something that's relative to that stakeholder. That's kind of what I'm trying to get to here. Okie dokie, so let's move on. So the next case study was from the Tyndale Centre of Climate Research. So they were, after years and years of climate research, started a partnership with Metropolitan City Council, Manchester Metropolitan City Council. And they wanted to get the city greener, they wanted to get the city cleaner, and start to actually encourage different behavioural choices, different kind of decision making in terms of climate. Now in this, didn't really mention climate, they didn't really mention environmentalism. They used a different language because the stakeholder was the general public. So they used language like community, health and well-being, bringing people together, living a simpler, cheaper way of life, saving money, saving energy. That was the type of language they used. And in our nature, the main name of it was used within a hashtag. So they encouraged people to create content around this area. And then by creating content, the campaign was able then to share people's content across all social platforms to spread the message. And again, I've got a short video here that I'm going to show you on this. Okay, so again, taking years and years of research, how people can live, what the benefits of creating community gardens, the benefits of having community fridges, I didn't really know much about community fridges, but it's about fridges that everyone can use. Say you're going away for a few days and you've got food and it's going to spoil. You can use these community fridges. If you've made something, you can put it in there and people can share food. Obviously, food waste is a huge contributor to climate change. So they delivered it in a way that was accessible, that was fun, it was interesting, it was playful. They didn't overdo the words decarbonizing and net zero and climate change. They used language that people understand, and it was about bringing people together. And they had to work on multiple levels with multiple different stakeholders to get people involved. So it wasn't just about the city council and the Tyndale Centre. It was about getting local businesses involved. It was about getting local community groups. They talked about here about the Manchester's Kurdish community together. And the great thing about bringing communities together is that actually lots of communities have a huge history of being less wasteful, about upcycling, about using clothes longer, about fixing things, being able to sew buttons, being able to sew a hole in socks, these kind of things. And actually, it's a generational thing. It's not so much a cultural thing. It's a generational thing. We don't have to look at our parents and grandparents where they wouldn't just wear clothes and throw them away. They would only have a certain amount of clothes, so they would fix them. They would fix things in their gardens and in their houses and recycle and upcycle materials. It's like a lost art in a way. And I think projects like In Our Nature brings back those kind of traditions in a really positive way. And I think we need to see more of that from a community level. So the next case study is the University of College Dublin. Now, Sung, you may know about this because Raffaella was involved in this. But up till recently, and it's still going on now, they were finding like 30-foot long fatbergs within the sewers of London. They know now that it was mainly wipes. There was nappies and things. It was a clog up of fat, but it was wipes that were doing that. People flushing wipes down the toilet. So they had to do a lot of research in this, and then it created this huge story. And from the research, the University of College Dublin, it was Dr. Tom Curran, aka Dr. Fatberg, turned this information and what was happening into a comic book. So a comic book that children could read. Their parents would read that story to them. But it was a way of educating people that, what do you flush down the toilet? How are you, what kind of things are you flushing through your showers and your sinks? And it was a way of educating them. And it was a collaboration between the University of College Dublin and a few other universities were involved, actually, and Swift Comply as well. And it just went viral, really. There was 2 comics that came out. I think there may be more now. But from the back of that, in terms of the science and industry, there was exhibitions at the Museum of London. They did open tours for the water treatments, Cross Ness. They did Cranfield University. We're doing laboratory visits. It just loads and loads of things came off the back of this campaign. And actually, what's about to launch now is the Fatberg musical. So, starting from a science project, a research project of how to break down what were these fatbergs, then all the way to now they're actually about to launch a musical about Fatberg. And I just think it's fascinating. But it's another way of just getting your message out there and delivering it in a new way, in a different way that you'd not thought about. And then lastly, Beta-X, which was a De Montfort University project. We were involved in this. So we had 2 different communication challenges here. One was from Historic England, that after COVID, people weren't returning to the high street. And because they weren't returning to the high street, businesses were going out of business and old historic buildings were going into ruin. They weren't being maintained. They didn't have people occupying them, and they were kind of going to ruin. And these buildings were hundreds of years old, Art Gothic, French Gothic, amazing architecture. But also at the time, we had a lot of heat on Leicester because of fast fashion. Lots of big fast fashion brands here, not working correctly, not paying their staff correctly, slave labour, really negative use of materials. And we had to come up with an idea that basically, one, celebrated good slow fashion, good independent makers, good brands that are creating good products that have good sustainable practices, whilst looking after and bringing people to the high street. So we occupied an old building, we renovated an old building and put in B2X. And B2X was a design and sustainability hub. And it was there to share ideas. It was there for knowledge transfer within design, science, nature and art, with an emphasis on sustainable practice. So some of the events that we had on here was about upcycling workshops. We were looking at more sustainable materials, dyes, different ways of manufacture, side cycling, looking at byproducts and materials and how they could be used, and just created a whole pop-up program of events that were the combination of design, science, art and design, but with an emphasis on new technology and sustainability and more circularity within design, the design sector. So it was a completely different way of looking at research and disseminating research within a program, within a really interesting space on the high street. So we often, in terms of media, I think how we're doing for time. Yeah, I've got a few minutes. In terms of media, we need to start thinking out the box a little bit how we do media. You know, we can create an identity, we can create a website, but there's other things that we could be doing that are a bit more hands-on, a little bit different. So obviously identity is an important thing. Often we just have an acronym of our research and then we create a logo, a very quick logo, and that's about it. But our identity is what's really going to separate us out from everything else. Our identity is the thing that's going to connect us with our stakeholders. So we do need to invest in a really good, slick, clean, smart identity that can be used on multiple platforms in multiple media. Okay, yeah, so again, looking at iconography and reduction. I'm a big believer in the reduction of our information, the reduction of our language, the reduction of information on our slides, the reduction of the information on our website. How do we boil it down to we have just really catchy, sticky, interesting language that disseminates and communicates our research in a clear way, in a simple way that either a 5-year-old or a grandparent would understand. That is where the deep work is, because then we can then communicate with multiple stakeholders on multiple levels in a really simple way. Visual language. So the visual language is the way that we use words and pictures and graphics and video in a cohesive way, in a way that's joined up, and that can be used on multiple platforms. And we do this through storytelling, we do it through value proposition and understanding our belief systems, and basically how do we communicate our research and technology in a much simpler way. Again, here's just some ideas of diagrams. It could be, if it's scientific, how do we visually create scientific diagrams and illustrations that people can understand. So I always advise research projects to create a channel. Now, a channel isn't just a website talking about what we do. A channel should be unbiased. A channel should be kind of on the fence, really, and you can kind of unbrand a channel. So the key with the channel is trying to find out what is the essence of what we're trying to create. Who does it benefit now and in the future? What role does it play in their lives? What are our major strengths? And what makes us different from everyone else? And the key with the channel is who has the most trusted voice in our space. Now, if we don't know who the trusted voice is, then there's an opportunity there for us to be the most trusted voice in our research, in our area. Now, if there's other people, we bring them into the space and we create the channel. And the channel is literally just having really, really good conversations that we have over the computer or within these networks or drinking a cup of coffee. It's about creating content that people can listen to. It's normally long form content. Now they're done through a podcast or through a vlog, and it's a great way of creating legacy. It's a great way of documentation of conversation and ideas and discussion. Arguments sometimes are great, or heated debate about our subject area, but the channel houses that, and the channel is there to then educate people about what the research is all about, and we create that trusted voice in our space. But I get a vlog, podcast are the two common areas, but it could be a weekly webinar. It could be a physical. It could be a weekly debate or a monthly debate in a physical space that we video and we document the audio. It could be a panel show, whatever the right channel and the type of content is right for the research. And it could be a mixture of all of it. It might not be just one thing. It could be a bit of everything. And then the physical space. I'm a big believer. I'm actually more of a physical space first, digital space second. I like creating a space that actually communicates in a new way, that actually makes people feel a certain way, whether it be visually or audio, and creating things that are more kinesthetic, that people can touch and see and feel in terms of our research. And looking at and doing things in a different way, you know, if it's exporting people back, we talked at the very beginning, Ricardo was talking about old ways of making and old ways of using fashion and textiles, and then but we can deliver that information in a new way, in a, maybe it could be in a VR or an AI world, it could be using physical displays and boards and digital screens to connect people with the past in the way that we used to produce clothing and garments. So the next step for you is, this is what you should be doing with your research teams or on your own, it's up to you, is assemble a team, and it could be stakeholders, but explore new ideas around identity, content and community building. And what you want to do is develop a game plan to increase stakeholder participation of the research, increase ways to measure the impact of the research, engage industry and business partnerships, increase the chances of being published in industry journals, attract other university partnerships, develop engaging media for additional funding and investment, and attract new students to the school and university. Okay, there's my details. We do a fortnightly email that goes out that talks about research communications. So if you would like to sign up to that, give me a shout and I'll sign you up. Okay, thank you very much.